Hey there, viewers. Welcome back. I'm Eric O, and that is the Rav4, and this is part 4. I know that I said I wasn't going to record anymore, and well, frankly, I wasn't. I'm down here, it's a weekend, and honestly, I'm lonely. No, I'm just kidding. I really wasn't going to record anymore, but you know, I'm this far into it, so what the heck? Let's go for it. You guys are saying that you like the long, lengthy videos for whatever reason, and I've never done one of these, so let's do it together. If I screw it up, you'll be right there with me, and I'll place all the blame on you. So where I'm at, or where we left off, the head was torqued and it's tight, and the insert seemed to hold up. I didn't see any head bolts loose laying around in there, so everything held, so that's good. The cams are in and they're tight. And I was just poking, I tore the thing apart kind of in a hurry. So I know it's gonna sound ridiculous, but I don't, I should have marked like some cam timing before I ripped it apart, but I'm like, there'll be good information out there, we'll find it. So I look on the repair website there, the Pro Demand that we use, and it's all, you know, it's all Toyota stuff. And it's not really specific on the cam timing, so I think I've got it figured out. I'll bring you along. The information's okay. They could have done a lot better with it, I'll just tell you that. There's a lot of marks on the cam gears. There's an I and an E for intake and exhaust, and there's dots and slashes, and so, but I think we have it, and let's go have a look. So what there is, there's marks on the face of the sprocket here, and it's impossible to record because I've already got the sprockets on and torqued, and they say to line it up with the marks on the number 1 and number 2 cam bearings, and they don't really give anything specific, but I assume that this little arrow is our mark. We got one there, and then we go back on the intake cam bearing here, and we also have a little arrow mark back here too, so I'm just going to put little white dots on them to enhance them. So this is the exhaust cam sprocket here, and you can see it has, I should have recorded this before I put it on, but I had no intention of recording this. So it has an E right here, and then opposite, on the opposite side, if you're doing one of these, you'll see an I. No mention of these in the repair information, so I can only assume that the E faces the exhaust and the I faces the intake, and there's a notch right here, a little notch on the front of the cam sprocket, and I assume, oops, let me turn this so you can see it. So there's a notch right there. I assume that is our timing mark based on what I read. It's very, very vague. And if we come back here on the intake sprocket, if we go around it, there's, you know, there's notches. There's a couple notches around this thing, but there's only one notch on the VVT portion here that actually comes all the way back through to the cam sprocket. So I'm going to assume that that is our timing mark. So what it tells us to do is to take the marks on our cam bearings and line them up with the marks on the sprockets. So I'm just going to transfer, oh, there's a little dot right there, so there's a transfer mark already on the back. So we'll kind of draw a little line. So we'll transfer those marks, but I don't see any little dots on the back of the sprocket there. So I'm just going to transfer my own mark over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wrench and I'm going to spin this one over to make sure there is no dot here on the back side. And we'll transfer a little dot here so we can line up the dots and hope for the best. Let's just spin this over. All the pistons are down right now. They're in the same position it was when we put the head on, so no worries there. Well, I don't see any marks. I gotta assume that's right. So it's got a little tension on it, so that's where it needs to go. That's what I'm sticking with. This one here, we're going to back it up, get everything lined up. And that has a little tension on it. Okay, let's keep going. So down on the crankshaft, there's a mark too. That mark's pretty obvious. That's got like just one dot. It's the only thing that's there. So what the intention is we're going to take our chain, and there's marks on the chain. We've got two. That's got the gold package. It's got 2 gold links on it. These 2 gold links will go on the cam gears, on the marks on the cam gear. And then we have looks like a red link. This red link will go down on the mark on the crankshaft. So crank, cam, turns around. And theoretically, everything should line up. So let's give it a shot. Down here on the crankshaft, we've got to rotate the crank still, but there's our mark, that little dot right here, that little dot right there. That is our mark, so we've got to turn that clockwise. Well, we've got our cams set where they need to be, and that'll put number 1 at top dead center. And according to the repair information, what that'll do, that'll put that keyway right there, right at the top. And just as I suspected, this is difficult to video, so I apologize for not getting good video, but I'm going to take and we'll look at it when it's all done. Let's get the chain dropped down through here. I'm going to line up the first gold mark on our notch. On our notch here. Get this around. We'll get our cams lined up here, because they're both going to be under tension a little bit. Okay. Alright, so I've got our gold marks lined up there. Make sure I'm on the right little peg here. On that. That's right. I want to mark my chains here. I don't know if you can see this. Yeah. I want to mark my chains, the gold links. I'm going to mark them on the back side. That's our gold link. This one's our gold link here. Okay. So with everything on here, I took the 14mm wrench, keeping all our marks lined up, and I put a little bit of slack. I rotated it this way. That way we've got slack on this side of the chain, which typically all the slack should be on the other side because that's where our tensioner is. It's going to allow us to go underneath and hopefully line it up on our crank. It's kind of hard to work around the camera. So here's our orange link. Let me move my light. Sorry if you can't see. So there's the dot on our crank gear. So we'll pull that out. Well, try to do this on one-handed. Maybe I didn't get enough slack. Yeah, there we go. So stick that on. Okay, got a lot of slack. Okay, so hopefully you can see that, but we got the dot here on the crank pulley, or on the crank sprocket, lined up with the orange colored tooth. Before I go up and rotate that cam back, I'm going to rotate this just a smidge. That way, I guess a little closer to vertical with our keyway. So now technically, I should be able to rotate this back a little bit to get our marks lined up, and we should have all the tension, or the slack on the slack side. Let's see if it, let me go down, make sure it didn't jump down there. I heard it kind of slap a little bit. I don't know if that was just the cam kicking back or if it popped off on us down there. Okay, well, everything looks like it stayed as intended. Yeah, it's, I mean, it has to be right, even if these marks aren't, 100%, because it's going off a tooth count from chain to chain, or, from link to link, with the gold links and the colored links, so it has to be correct. There's no way to theoretically be a half a link off or anything of that nature. So I'm going to grab the other chain guide, we'll get that put in. I'm going to get tension on stuff, and I'll get the camera a little closer, we can have a look. So on that chain, there's 2 guides. There's one on each side. There's on the exhaust side of the engine, there's the guide that's fixed. And all the chain guide is essentially what the name indicates, is it guides the chain. This chain guide goes on the intake side, and this one's on a pivot. Down at the bottom it pivots, has the tensioner that goes up at the top that holds tension in on the slack side of the chain. So I'm going to go underneath, put this on, we're going to stick our tensioner back in there, release that, let it hold tension on it, and double check our timing marks, but theoretically, I mean, we should be in good shape. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I said we're gonna put that other guide on there, and then we're gonna stick the tensioner in. Well, just one small problem. The tensioner goes in the timing cover, so we won't be sticking this in anytime soon. But here's what it is. This is our timing belt tensioner. Pretty sweet. It has a gasket that goes with it also. So basically this goes into the timing cover. It's going to come out and hit that other shoe to hold the tension against our chain. And it has a little, once you decompress it, has a little paw right here that essentially I pushed this thing in a long time ago. I think I pushed it in right after I took it out, but you open up this paw, push the tensioner back in, and then it has a little catch on this side that you can flick it back over, and it holds it in. So I assume, I'll have to read on this, when we stick it in the timing cover, that we'll be able to reach down in with a screwdriver or something and flick our little catch, let it go, and it will protrude out, holding tension against our chain guide. And I believe it, yeah, I was gonna say it has an oil port on it also. So I assume, it's a pressurized portion of the timing cover. I'm not positive on that. We'll have to do a little digging on that and see. It's tight on this side of the engine. So a lot of these, mechanical chain tensioners are also backed up, by oil pressure, maintaining them in the outward position. So I believe that's how that works. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'll have to do a little research on that, but I've seen a lot of them like that. Some of these cars, when you start them up, they rattle just briefly for, 1/10 of a second until they get oil pressure and pushes out on that chain. You hear a lot on the Ecotechs and stuff when you change oil on them and stuff of that nature. But I'll get the camera down here. I'll show you that adjustable shoe. I think the best thing to do is go down there with a mirror, because I can't get the camera in there to show you what's going on. Camera's a little too thick. So I'll show you where we're at with the cams. I had to redo the paint mark because the paint just absorbed into some oil and just had this huge white blob on the back there. So I cleaned it off with a little bit of brake parts cleaner and made some new marks so you guys can see from the front side, hopefully here with the mirror, and then also from the back. So if you're doing one of these, you got kind of an idea where the timing should be. So let's have a look. This is the exhaust cam, and you can see we've got the notch right there on the pulley, or on the sprocket rather, lined up with the gold mark. On the back side of the head, or the back of the engine, or well, technically the right side of the engine, there is our, man, I'm losing it here, intake cam, intake sprocket, our VVT sprocket. Now remember, there's two marks on that VVT sprocket, so this is going to be the one that has the double notch. Essentially, it's got the notch on the VVT portion of the cam sprocket, plus it has the notch on the cam sprocket, and you can see here in the mirror that they are lined up with the gold mark on the chain. So what I did to kind of clarify this, let me see where we're at here. So this obviously is our gold link. You can see a little bit of the paint transfer there. I marked a little spot on the center of our sprocket, which is where the, what do I want to say, the timing mark is on the front side of that sprocket. So I transferred that white mark there, and then I transferred it to the back of the sprocket. And I know this is quite difficult to see, but we have our arrow here, and I tried to transfer that little arrow mark forward and then to the white mark on our sprocket. So you can see that we're as lined up as we can be. I mean, like I say, there's no way to really be off, half a tooth or anything of that nature. So there is the exhaust cam. That's what that looks like from the back side. And so I think we're in good shape there. And you can see between the this gold link here, I did the same thing because you can see that's where our notch is. So I transferred that white paint mark over to the back side. You can see the little arrow there on the cam bearing. I put just a touch of white on that. Tried to transfer that straight up the best I could, and you can see here on the back side that we're lined up. Try to get my camera angle so you can tell, but you have to take my word for it. So we should be in good shape. Should be being the key word there. And then down here on the crank, you can see the mark on the crank lined up with the orange mark, and no other real reference mark here other than the fact having the keyway pointing straight up. And let me try to get a camera angle here for you. So this is our permanent shoe, or our permanent guide. This is on the front side of the engine, so this is on the exhaust side of the engine. This guide's permanent. This is where the tension is. This is the slack side. This is where all of our slack in the chain should be, so because engine rotation is clockwise, so it's constantly going to be pulling on this one, putting a slack on this side. Tensioner is going to be taking that slack up. And if all goes well, it should work just fine for us. So I think we got it right dead on the money. Okay, and then I got to take and put the crank trigger back on here. Make sure the F faces forward. That should be easy enough to remember. Well, it'd be a real pisser if you forgot that thing, huh? Oh man, talk about ruining your day. Next thing we gotta do, I guess, is get the timing cover, get that sealed back on. I think I'm gonna pull this stud out. I think I probably should have when I took it off. But like I said, I was just tearing to get it off. I'm gonna pull that off. It's gonna make going back together a lot easier, I believe. So I'm looking at our repair information, and it wants us to apply seal packing. I think they mean silicone. It's funny, some of the terminology they use on stuff, they refer to as FIPG, which up here, remove any old packing, and then they have it FIPG material. Be careful not to drop any, all that business. I don't know what the FIPG stands for, other than silicone. We're going to use a Permatex Ultra Gray. That's what I use. They give us an idea as to where they want it. Obviously, it's where all the spots we took off. Oh, look at this. Parts must be assembled within 3 minutes of application. Wow, this would be a really sweet area to have one of those voiceover guys. Yeah. Ooh, and again, they warn us 3 minutes application. Then it gives us a torque spec here. Gives us our bolt specs. So yeah, I think we're in good shape. And then yeah, putting that stud back in that we took out, yeah, using E10. So yeah, I should have removed that to remove the timing cover. I think before we do all this, it'd be a good idea to kind of dry fit it, and we have to replace this crank seal too, and then dry fit it and make sure that we're not going to hit anything on the way down and wipe the silicone off.
As Eric O applies the Ultra Gray, he will have less than 3 minutes to install the timing cover, or the entire job will become a complete failure.
I did the dry fit. It's snug. I found the best way to do is we're going to come up from the top, kind of at a little cattywampus angle. If we get it in one shot without smudging the silicone, it's going to be a miracle. Got to change out the crank seal. I just got the old one on here. It's getting hard. Probably better just do it out of maintenance. I mean, we got the cover off, so let's get that swapped out. I don't feel like going on the other side to use the bench, so I just got it propped up on a couple blocks of wood. Get a suitable punch. Let's knock it out. I'm going to use just a seal driver here. I think I got an insert that'll fit it good. That'll just kind of hold tension out on the lip of the seal to keep the spring from falling out. Of course, in this case, if the spring fell out, we'd see it anyways, be able to put it back in there, no problem. Good. Looks like it's flush with our cover. Always a good idea to just flip them over, have a look. Like I say, make sure the spring didn't follow the seal. I'll show you on the old seal, so you kind of have an idea. So the seals, most seals have a spring inside of them here, and this lip that actually holds tension over on the lip. So there's the spring. That's the idea behind the centerpiece here on a seal driver. So when we put that on there, it'll actually hold tension out on that spring. if you don't have one of these and you're putting seals in, I mean, not even necessarily sealing this, but you're putting a seal in something and you don't want the spring to fall out. And the reason the spring falls out is because when we're tapping on it with a hammer, it could jar it loose. Kind of an old school trick you can do is actually take a bunch of grease and you can just pack grease on the back side of the seal and it will keep that spring from bouncing out on you. Great. As the tension builds, we're faced with another dilemma. Will there be enough silicone or won't there? I just looked all over. I don't have another tube. So let's find out. Only one way to know, right? Well, doesn't that just suck? We ran out right here. Fortunately, I was able to knife open the container. And I think we've got enough to do the job. Not a problem here. Now, there's a couple divots in this timing cover. I think it's where the block halves come together or something down there, but it requires a tad more silicone there. I'm just going to make sure that we've got this applied to all the flat surfaces. Probably not going to want to plug any in this oil port here. That is for our chain tensioner. I can't believe I didn't have enough silicone. There's port planning in action right there, folks. Alright, I'm going to get the rest of this spread around. Alright, somebody start the stopwatch. Silicone's on, it's spread around. We had just enough. It worked out really sweet. I'm very thankful for that. I'd like to get this on and bolt it down before I go home. This is going to be the tricky part. Putting it in dry, you probably don't realize how many times you touch the silicone portion. Pretty sure this is the way I went. We don't have any silicone to spare. Man, talk about a tense moment. I wish I could show you what's going on over here, but I can't. I think I brought it all the way in. I'm just trying not to let it flick out and touch the block. So far, so good. Okay, we're down. Haven't touched anything yet. Got to clear this cam sprocket over here. Okay, we've cleared the cam sprocket. I don't believe we touched anything. I got two studs up here I got to get it lined up on. We're on that one, we're on that one. Got some dowel pins that's got to go on. Boy, I think we got success. It's going to be difficult to record putting the timing cover bolts in it, but essentially that's what I'm going to do now. I've got, I think there's like 14 of them or something there. We're going to go ahead and get those in. I'm going to start snugging it up. I'm going to look around and make sure the silicone oozed out of, the crack all the way around. If it didn't, it's my own fault because I didn't get enough silicone. So if I don't see it oozing out and I'm not comfortable with it, the fact it's going to seal, just going to pull it back off and go downtown and get some more. Well, you know what stinks is I just put it on and I put the bolts in it and I got thinking there's two bolts that run through the center of this cover. Right around those, there's little aluminum bosses that stick out that hit against the block when you tighten it down. Right around both of those, there's supposed to be some silicone. Will it leak out of them bolt holes, ultimately leaking down in front of the cover? I don't know, but anyhow, it's my mistake. I need to take it back off. I don't have any of the bolts tight. I just put them all in finger tight. And as I was doing that, and I put them center bolts in, it just dawned on me, I got in a hurry and I just did the outside perimeter of the timing cover. Yeah, I could probably silicone the head of the bolt, tighten it up, but I don't know. I don't want this plaguing me. It is what it is. It's gonna be a mess. I gotta take it back off. I gotta clean all that silicone off, run downtown, get a new tube. Lesson learned. Boy, it's stuck on there pretty good already. Hasn't even been on there that long. Give me a little screwdriver. Had to go down and pop it off the dowels. It was on there good. Oh, that's a bummer, man. Dang it. I did forget to. I guess at least it wasn't all torqued on, but had good application anyways. And what I forgot was this one here and that one there. Dang. That's a lot like leaving the house and saying, did I turn off the coffee pot, or did I lock the door? I'm putting them bolts in there and I'm like, did I put silicone on those center two ones? And I double checked on the computer to see if it was required, and well, it is. I made a mistake. That bothers me. I mean, not the fact I make a mistake, but the fact that I don't have any more silicone here. That's the part that bothers me. So I'm gonna get this mess cleaned up. I gotta clean this all off, and I'm gonna go back through a brake clean, and after I wipe the silicone off and prepare it again. Unfortunately, I'm out of time for today. I've got to go home, and Vanessa's leaving for a little bit, so I'm on diaper duty and gonna take care of that. So that's gonna do it for this video. Well, sometimes things don't always go as planned. What are you gonna do though, Well, I could have edited out the entire mistake and nobody'd be any the wiser, but that's life. We make mistakes, and everybody makes them, and I make them, and you make them, and I assume I'm gonna keep on making them. But, it was just an overlook, and, you gotta sit there and wonder the whole time, do I tighten it down? Don't I? Will it leak? Won't it? If it does leak, is it gonna leak quickly? You know what? I would just encourage you, if you're doing this or any other job, and you get to that point where, geez, did I leave the coffee pot on point? If you don't know, you're better off just tearing it back and apart, because it will plague you, or at least that's my my findings. Especially done this for a long time, and probably back in my younger days, I might have, well, let's just tighten it up. It's gonna haunt you, and it has haunted me in the past, and fortunately, not not in the recent past, but working a long time ago. And like I say, you just want to, you want to get the job done. You don't want to admit mistake, but you're better off just admitting the mistake, just like I had to here. Yeah, it sets me back another day. But that's life. So I gotta wrap it up. I'm gonna pick things up here. I'm gonna head home. I got a couple boys at home that want to play with Legos. So I'm gonna go home and play with Legos, because Legos are awesome, even if you're 35 years old. So I guess that's it for me, and on my way home, I'm gonna grab us another tube of Ultra Gray. And the thing is, I've got nobody here working with me, so you wanna know whose fault it is? Right here, this guy. It's my fault. Life goes on. I'll be back. We'll finish this up. I told you we weren't gonna, but I'm into it this deep and so far behind. Does it really matter? No. So anyhow, viewers, remember, if I can make mistakes, you can make mistakes. Thanks for watching.